Have you ever looked around your practice and wondered why good people keep leaving? Maybe you've blamed the job market, younger generations, higher salaries across town, or the simple fact that healthcare has become harder than ever. While all of those things certainly play a role, what if I told you that your staffing problem isn't really a staffing problem at all? More often than not, turnover is actually a systems problem. Practices with strong systems consistently retain people longer than practices that rely on good intentions and heroic managers. They create clarity, they reduce frustration, they help people succeed, and when people succeed, they're much more likely to stay. Welcome to Medical Money Matters, the podcast where you can find experts, answers, and resources so that you can achieve mastery over the financial and business aspects of your practice. Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Jill Arena. I began my career in accounting and finance, and I have more than 30 years of experience running medical groups. I own and operate a national healthcare consulting and revenue cycle company, and I am the author of Physician Heal Thy Financial Self. In 2020, I co-founded the Physician Leadership Project, and in 2025, I released Physician's Edge, the first of its kind CME-accredited online business education for physicians. My passion is to increase financial and business literacy for physicians. Episode 189. Your staffing problem isn't a staffing problem. It's a system problem. Have you ever looked around your practice and wondered why good people keep leaving? Maybe you've blamed the job market, younger generations, higher salaries across town, or the simple fact that healthcare has become harder than ever. While all of those things certainly play a role, what if I told you that your staffing problem isn't really a staffing problem at all? More often than not, turnover is actually a systems problem. Practices with strong systems consistently retain people longer than practices that rely on good intentions and heroic managers. They create clarity, they reduce frustration, they help people succeed, and when people succeed, they're much more likely to stay. Today, we're continuing the conversation we started in our last episode about building a culture of accountability. Because accountability doesn't exist in a vacuum. It depends on systems. You can't expect people to be accountable if you've never given them a clear roadmap for success. One of the biggest misconceptions in leadership is believing that hiring great people automatically creates a great organization. It doesn't. Great people placed into broken systems eventually become frustrated people. Think about your newest employee. Imagine walking into your practice on your first day. No structured orientation, no clear training plan. Everyone is friendly, but busy. One person shows you one way to complete a task. Someone else shows you a different way, and by the end of the week, you're afraid to ask another question because you don't want to look incompetent. Unfortunately, that's not an unusual story. Many practices confuse orientation with training. Orientation is where the bathrooms are, how to log into the EMR, and where to park. Training is developing competence. It's teaching not only what to do, but why it matters, how success is measured, and how someone's role contributes to the larger mission of the practice. Without structured training systems, every new employee is forced to reinvent the wheel. Existing staff become trainers on top of already demanding jobs. Inconsistency creeps into every process. Mistakes increase. Confidence drops. Eventually, someone decides the practice just isn't a good fit. Often, it wasn't the person who failed. It was the system. High-performing practices don't leave training to chance. They have standardized onboarding checklists, competency milestones, documented workflows, scheduled check-ins, and clear expectations for the first 30, 60, and 90 days. They don't assume learning happens automatically. They build systems that make learning inevitable. But training is only the beginning. Once employees become competent, another question quickly follows. Why should I stay here? This is where many practices unknowingly lose their very best people. If employees cannot see a future inside your organization, they'll eventually create one somewhere else. Too often, we unintentionally build organizations with only two career options: stay in the exact same position forever or leave. Those aren't career paths, they're dead ends. Ambitious employees don't just want higher pay, they want growth. They want new challenges. They want additional responsibility. They want to know that if they invest in your practice will invest in them. Think about your highest performing medical assistant, your strongest biller, or your most reliable front office employee. Have you ever shown them what their next opportunity looks like? Could they become a lead, a trainer, a supervisor? How about a project manager? Could they develop expertise in coding, quality improvement, patient experience, or operations? Have you really shown them what a career path could look like with you? If the answer is no, someone else eventually will. Practices that retain talent intentionally create internal ladders for advancement. They identify future leaders early. They provide mentoring. They cross-train employees. They celebrate development, not just longevity. The result is something incredibly valuable: hope. People stay where they believe tomorrow can be better than today. Compensation systems tell a similar story. This is another area where practices often unintentionally send mixed messages. Many organizations say they value initiative, teamwork, efficiency, and exceptional patient care. Then everyone receives exactly the same annual raise regardless of performance. The message becomes very clear. Why work harder? Compensation doesn't always have to mean large bonuses. Incentives can take many forms: recognition programs, professional development opportunities, additional paid time off, team-based performance incentives, gain sharing when the practice succeeds, educational reimbursement, leadership opportunities. The important part isn't necessarily the size of the reward. It's the connection between meaningful contribution and meaningful recognition. People want to know that their efforts matter. When they don't, motivation slowly fades. Now here's where all these systems begin connecting together. Training systems produce confident employees. Career development systems produce engaged employees. Compensation systems reinforce desired behaviors. Accountability systems create consistency. All together, they create culture. Culture isn't built through motivational posters or mission statements hanging on the wall. Culture is the natural outcome of the systems people experience every single day. And here's what many leaders overlook. Every time someone leaves your practice, there's an enormous cost attached to that decision. Most leaders immediately think about recruiting expenses, advertising, interviewing, background checks. Those costs are real, but they're only the beginning. There's lost productivity while the position sits vacant. Existing employees absorb additional work, increasing stress and burnout. New hires require weeks or months before reaching full productivity. Patient experience often suffers. Scheduling becomes more difficult. Errors increase. Institutional knowledge disappears every time an experienced employee walks out the door. In healthcare, where relationships matter, turnover also affects patients. Patients notice when familiar faces disappear. They lose confidence when they're constantly meeting someone new. Retention isn't simply an HR issue. It's a financial strategy. It's an operational strategy. And ultimately, it's a patient care strategy. Right about now, you may be thinking, this sounds expensive. Building systems does require an investment of time and energy. But compare that investment to replacing employee after employee after employee. One requires planning. The other requires constant firefighting. Practices often underestimate how much they're already paying for poor systems. If you're replacing 5 employees every year instead of 1, you're already spending the money. You're simply spending it on turnover instead of retention. And that is an expensive way to operate. You're listening to Medical Money Matters, a weekly podcast brought to you by Healthy Practices, a healthcare consulting and revenue cycle company dedicated to keeping our clients independent. If you're looking for more ways to strengthen your business skills, check out Physician's Edge, the first of its kind, CME-accredited online business education for physicians. It's a mini MBA online course designed to help you master the financial side of your practice. You can find that and more about how we support practices like yours at healtheps.com. That's www.healtheps.com. And don't forget to follow or subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. So where do you begin? Don't try to fix everything at once. Instead, ask yourself 4 simple questions. First, if someone joined your practice next Monday, would they experience a structured onboarding process that sets them up for success? Second, does every employee understand exactly what success looks like in their role and how it will be measured? Third, can your employees clearly see opportunities for growth over the next 3 to 5 years without leaving your organization? And fourth, are your compensation and recognition systems encouraging the behaviors you actually want to see? If any of those answers are unclear, you've identified an opportunity, not just to improve retention, but to strengthen your entire practice. One of the greatest leadership shifts you can make is moving from reacting to problems toward designing systems that prevent them. Exceptional leaders don't spend all day solving the same issues over and over again. They ask a different question. What system allowed this problem to happen? When you ask that question consistently, your leadership changes. Instead of blaming individuals, you improve processes. Instead of replacing employees, you develop them. Instead of constantly searching for better people, you build an organization where good people thrive. And that's ultimately what every independent medical practice needs today. Not endless hiring, not bigger signing bonuses, not another desperate recruiting campaign. It needs systems that allow ordinary people to consistently do extraordinary work. When those systems exist, accountability becomes easier because expectations are clear. Training becomes more effective because it's consistent. Leadership becomes stronger because future leaders are intentionally developed. Employees become more engaged because they see a future. Patients receive better care because stable, experienced teams deliver it. The irony is that the practices with the lowest turnover usually aren't the ones paying the highest salary. They're the ones providing the greatest clarity, the strongest support, the most meaningful development, and the clearest sense of purpose. People don't just stay because of a paycheck. They stay because they feel successful. They stay because they're growing. They stay because they're valued. And those outcomes don't happen by accident. They happen by design. If you're struggling with turnover today, resist the temptation to simply fill another position. Instead, pause long enough to ask what system may have contributed to the vacancy in the first place. That one question has the power to transform not only your hiring, but your leadership, your culture, your financial performance, and ultimately the future of your practice. Until next time. Before we wrap up, if you're listening to this and thinking, it's not just one thing, there are multiple parts of my practice that could be running better, I want you to know that you're not alone. Most physicians were never taught how to run the business side of medicine, and yet you're expected to lead complex, multi-million-dollar organizations. That's not a personal failing, it's a systems gap. At Healthy Practices, our operational and strategic consulting is designed to help you close that gap. We work alongside physicians and leadership teams to bring clarity to the business, everything from workflow and staffing models to financial performance, growth strategy, and long-term planning. The goal is to help you move from reactive and overwhelmed to structured, intentional, and in control. For some practices, that means solving immediate operational pain points. For others, it's about stepping back and building a clear strategy for sustainable growth, profitability, and leadership development. And often, it's both. Because when your systems, your people, and your financial performance are aligned, everything gets easier. Decisions become clearer, teams function better, and the day-to-day stress starts to come down. So if you're ready to take a more intentional look at how your practice is operating and where it could go next, I'd encourage you to reach out and start the conversation. You can find more information in the show notes or at healtheps.com.